Shout out to Tim, he's lent me his crane. Oh, been lent a crane, that's useful. Hope you don't think I put these bits of, you know, overpaint on it. I don't even use white. It's just started snowing. It does look like that. We'll put the gearbox in and we'll put the cab on, and then that'll be that. So, having put some weld repairs down there, the thing I'm going to use is this file sander, and I've got 40 grit paper on there, and I'll probably give that a start right now. Well, I'm going to keep on with that. I don't want to bore you. Got the gear, main lever. So I'm going to just follow the instructions. I've knocked back the lock tabs. I'm going to take out those 4 bolts. Separate the housing from the mounting plate. So here are the 4 fixings. Here's detail of one, and coming up from underneath, part of the fixing grips this circumference, and the other part is a lock tab that you push over. We could do that again in another place. If I could see what I was doing. There we go. So part of that lock tab grips that, and the other half is a lock tab washer that you'd flick over, drift over. That's got to go for a good clean and a paint job later. So here we have the ball locating bolt or pin. We're going to leave that here because we're going to take out that circlip first, which you can just see in there. There's a circlip. I'm going to take that out first. So now the gear lever is stripped down, cleaned up, ready for a paint. These fixings were 3/8 Whitworth socket, which is something like that. Now it will be ready to be painted, and the circlip was followed by the spacer or the seat, the spring, which is a quiet spring which should be compressible. I'm wondering how I'm going to put it back together. And then there's the spring seat. We've given the housing, I suppose it's the housing, bit of a clean. I like it, it's got a kind of an Art Deco look to it. Right, I've spent a few more sort of minutes on the door tops, so let's get back. This is the one with a substantial repair underneath, so I've kind of ground that down and painted it. Now the side you're looking at there is the side where the window channel will screw into, so the actual fixed pane of glass is on the right side of the channel. Let me point it. Should be flush up against some sealant in between this edge and the glass. This one, just giving it a sort of lick of paint inside, it's had a repair, sort of neat repair really. Not so neat there, but I know we're near finished with these door tops yet. It's seal channel waiting. Didn't really paint them very well. Obviously they're going to have an external blowover in green. moment they're this sort of pine colour, but we'll repaint these. So these, I'm going to try and drill these out to get a pop rivet in there. So it'll be a 3/16 hole. And we'll see where we go. Yeah, so that drilled out 3/16, which is great. So we can just rivet in the new lock. I kind of thought the rivets went all the way through, but they don't. So that's okay. Yeah, so looking at my air filter, of course I need an O-ring, and I need an O-ring for the gear knob as well at the bottom. We'll have to go and have a look at those. Yeah, so just degreasing this. I've decided I'll probably paint it upside down like that and save me masking anything off. So I just got to degrease that thoroughly. When it comes to block paint, I want to take this off. Okay, which is the wiring harness holder. So as well as that, we want to take the bolts off for the tappet. There should be 8 of those. Also, when you do this wiring, there are bolts that come down all the way here, and you need to leave enough space in the wire, particularly like for example here. The bolt will come all the way through, and if you've got your wire under the bolt hole, you'll have a problem. So I might need to put some fake bolts in just when we wire up there. It's going to be tricky to paint around things like that, but that's what we're going to do. You know, like take this out, take the bolts out for the tappets. Just needs a heck of a load of cleaning up, and then we'll clean some threads up. This will probably be one of the last times that I look at this 866, wondering what that was all about. Also, it's interesting to note that the original colour is the dark grey. And I've gone for duck egg, thinking a duck egg was probably a better bet, but no, it's this is Series 1 dark grey. Okay, that's what this is. So really, if I was going to try and be authentic, I wouldn't paint it in the Admiralty blue that I've bought, which is more like that plastic colour. Sort of a mixture of them both. You know, but as I'm painting the block up, I may as well paint it a bright colour as opposed to this dark colour. So it's been a few days with the transmission brake anchor plate, and I've got myself the expander unit dust cover. So to fit that, I've got to take off the clevis and the clevis lock nut, which I've loosened already. And what I'm going to do is just put a load of grease on these fixings, and then just slide this over there. It's going to be a little bit of a small hole, so it's going to be a nice tight fit, stop the muck getting in there. And I've just got to make sure that this is all tucked under. So I've got a reputable brand of this. And it was quite a thumbnail killer, to be honest, a fingernail killer, but let's have a look at this. It makes a nice seal all the way around. You do have to wiggle it around quite a lot. That's, you know, and there's plenty of grease everywhere. I've started to degrease it. I've just got to tighten up the adjustment end. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. These adjusters, they're not on a spring, but they should pop out. Yeah, that's about it when you pull the lever. Anyway, so now I'm going to put the clevis and the lock nut back on. So I'm using a 5/16 Whitworth socket just to remove those 4 lock-in, well, they're studs actually. Some of the studs have come away. Now this doesn't need the mud shield oil guard, because I'm fitting the mud shield oil catcher inside the anchor plate, so you don't actually need the other part, it just can fit straight to this. That's according to the workshop manual that I'm using. Actually, that's according to the parts catalogue, not the workshop manual. The parts catalogue says you don't need to order the mud shield here if you're using the oil catcher here, which we are. So I've got my transmission anchor plate safely on the back of the gearbox, and that is the clevis, which will need adjusting, and these work alright. It's a bit cold and the grease seems to have fecked up. The grease seems to have gone hard. Whoops. And so I hook the springs like underneath and here, so these holes here are redundant for this one, and I put them in this end first and then by hand just open them up, push them in there. So now when I pull this, that's about as good as they're going to work, really. It's a lot better than what they were though. Right, that's all nice and degreased and clean. Now moving over, now I've got to fit the oil catcher, so I'll have to undo these four, and I've got a gasket for the oil catcher, so I've got to go and fit that next. Now the shoes are on. Easy peasy. So I've got my oil catcher and joint washer, and I'm going to put Haldite on both sides of that joint washer. I may even put a layer of Haldite on the transmission brake anchor plate itself. Okay, I'm just letting my Haldite become a bit tacky. It's held in position by the two studs. There's two of the studs came out. I'll take you over to the oil catcher, which has just got a thin layer of Haldite on it. And there's the fixings for the transmission brake anchor plate. So I'm going to put all that together right about now. So I've got the transmission brake drum here, and I'm just cleaning the inside with some brake and clutch cleaner. And I've got a clean tissue for that. Oh dear, a bit dirty, isn't it? Don't want my new shoes to get dirty. You know what it's like with new shoes, you don't want them to get dirty. Anyway, so I'm going to carry on with that. Okay, so there we are with the transmission brake drum fitted. Now I've put the spacer washer and I call them castle nuts, you could call it slotted nut, and when it's on the vehicle I'll get the torque up as close to 85 as I can get it, and then still put a split pin through. Yeah, so Tim's crane has managed to lift the gearbox up, suspending it with the same tie dowels that I used to put the axle check straps in place. So those tie downs have come in quite handy. So this is your Sealy SC10, which I've never used before. It's quite straightforward. Okay, so what that's enabled is me to put it on a smaller dolly. So I've just lifted the gearbox onto a small dolly, so I can take that through the gate that I've got to go through. And it's a sort of trial run to see, you know, if these tie downs actually work, which they did, so that's good. Okay, so I set the tie downs up. I set up the tie downs, you know, so that on the deck the gearbox would look roughly level. So the way that's gone in, right down there, the first gearbox mount's gone in the mount. Okay, and the next one, so you don't have to get them both in at the same time. This one's now swinging, you know, so you can just carry on lowering that down. No bushes were harmed during the gearbox installation. Bodley is pretty hard stuff. Anyway, So I found it easier to put this side on first and then this side. Previously I had put this side on and was struggling to put this on. We know that's the left side now, and we know that's the right side. So now if I want to move the gearbox at all, like to do, I don't know, clutch, although the clutch is, you know, just maybe, I don't know, to align the clutch, put the engine in or what have you. If I can't do that with the front panel removed, I could just use a trolley jack to lift this up now. I don't need the crane anymore for the gearbox, so that's pretty well in. It does rock around a bit while it's not connected, but you know, it's not going anywhere because the gearbox tunnel does stop that. So let's have a look at this now. I did get a little bit bruised coming in. Alright, so obviously I've got to put the what the damn thing is called, the levers. I've got to put the levers on, ain't I? So I just figured out a little tip here. There's the speedo cable. Would have been easier to put the speedo cable in while the plate was off there, the anchor plate for the transmission brake. It's this part I'm talking about. Speedo goes in there, the speedo cable, and so it's going to be a bit more fiddly. I know I need a speedo cable. Should have really fitted it. It comes through this grommet, incidentally. This clip should have a grommet in it, should I say. And then take you over up to the other one. There's another one there. And I've an idea that there's another speedo holder somewhere around here. Okay, now that one I'm really pleased with. Went on. This one is a bit stiff. It's cut into the paintwork, and that one is very loose, which is a bit annoying. The other two are all right. So I'll have to get some gadgets to put in these, stop them rattling. What have I heard on the side of? Caution to the wind sort of thing. And here's the handbrake relay. So when we pull the handbrake lever up, that happens. But of course the handbrake lever is not attached yet. Oh, incidentally, well, let's look out. Oh, it's raining, but the dashboard is dry on the whole because, of course, you can hear the sound has changed. I put a roof in. You can hear the rain on the roof above the aeroplanes. Can't hear much, just aeroplanes. Okay, so we managed to get the roof in without breaking anything, which is good. And on the whole, we have dryness on the whole. Okay, there is a little bit of water coming in underneath the windscreen seal. However, I haven't fully done the bolts up on the windscreen, so it might get better. Let's take you over to the back of the cab. Now this little window lock it's not seating properly, so the window is just opening. It's opening without locking. I'm going to get around to doing something about that, hopefully. What I've got to do is put these bolts in here. I've only got one in here and one over the other end. Now let me just take you over to see the way that the roof is bolted in. Now I've bolted the roof with the bolts showing down and the nuts are on top. Now the reason I did that is because there's some trim here taking you over and I can see the screws there, but with hindsight it's the only way you could have done that if you screwed a piece of trim on there. But anyway, so there we are. Now what I've noticed, pay attention 007, you've got spacing there for a wing mirror. Not a wing mirror, a rear view mirror. But if I carry on moving along, what I notice is I have no provision at all for a sun visor. And I was going to get a sun visor because I like sun visors. I don't like driving into low sun, but this has never had a sun visor fitted. So I don't really want to let me find the holes. Where are the holes that I've been looking at? Yeah, they're the holes for the rear view mirror, but there's nothing like it for the sun visor. Incidentally as well, let me take you across the roof to have a look at these pop rivets. Oh, there's a big spider web. I think I've got some friendly spiders in here. There's no provision for an interior light that I wanted. But I'm thinking these pop rivets were for a headlining that might have been here once. I've tested this for working. I tried to put a washer on it, but it didn't need it. So I just did it up as far as it would go. It's a little beer mark, £3 job, made in India. You know, but it functions as a tap quite nicely. Undo and do up. So it's been tested. I'm just building up the radiator to the radiator grille panel. And I'll put my strip on, but I cut it too short. It should come down here apparently. I didn't know that, but you live and learn, don't you? So this is a radiator cowl. It's getting nice and wet now. Stuff here. But we've got a drain plug, the radiator cowl, functioning radiator on the grille panel. Need some buckets. It's got nice and wet. Should start going rusty soon. Look authentic. (29 of the first 62). That's now quite easily readable for me. 1/2" UNF engine mounts. I think that's the drain, block drain. I'll probably undo that and clean round it. This is prepping for paint. I've cleaned out all these 5/16 UNF sump jobbies, threaded holes. All kinds of sort of red paint there. Markings and things. Got that number there, 866. I'm going to paint over that. I don't quite know what that means unless it's to do with the heat shield manifold. But really here to take off this retaining half. I think it's 7/16, so it's not done up very tight. Not much more than finger tight really, that. he says. So I wonder each one of these I'm thinking is a spring washer. There it is. Really looking forward to getting this thing cleaned. Evidence of some sort of green, perhaps it was thread lock. Not so much on that one. Now it could be held in with some dowels and make it quite hard to get off. You never know. Yeah, it is. Let's just take off, get rid of the wire that's falling to pieces from here. Ready to take these tappets, bolts out, tappet bolts. Don't really need to take the tappets out, I don't think. Anyway, so we just need to check those over They're supposed to be tied in pairs. This one was tied all the way along in one go, but the trouble is, see, if you get, I think if you get, they're done in pairs, because if you get a problem with one, you don't have to undo them all, you can just undo two. Which is, it's easier to undo two than undo 8. Anyway, it's not very easy to do it. There's a lot of wobble wobble. There we go. Right, onwards. That's 3. Okay, here's that. I think it's a harness clip. Anyway, I'm going to take it off with this 1/2-inch socket and put it in a safe place. I'll put the bolt back in the hole, I think. Or maybe I won't. We'll just take all that out. Put that with the retaining clips, the retaining halves. Of course, we've still got a retaining half on here. I couldn't get it off because it's doweled on. It might even have sealing compound behind it. Oops, sorry about that. It might even have sealing compound behind it. So I unbolted it, it wouldn't move, but I'll put this with the bolts for that. So I'm just having a go at putting on the front part of this deep sill before I put the wing on or anything, just to see whether it was easier. You know, it certainly was easier to lean over here and get to these. The one under there on the B pillar is always a bit tricky, and there weren't no difference really. Wing on, wing off, that's still a bit of a tricky thing. So let's go and have a look at this now. We've put the roof on. Obviously I want to do some of the paintwork under this roof lip, which I didn't do because I sprayed it in one position. But this seal needs replacing because there's some metal showing there, but it's not the worst seal I've ever seen compared to example for the one that's next to it. So that's got to come off, this seal, pretty quickly actually, because these can be a bit sharp. This paint, I really need to address this because, you know, if we have a look at this paint, you know, which is, it's getting stained streaks from the grease and what have you that I've put elsewhere. There's some grease up here to stop rust, but you can't really have this paintwork here, you know, next to that paintwork there. It's no good. Having a look, I've got loads of overspray on the galv there to take off. This back bit really, probably going to leave it, you know, because the rest of the bed matches it. But we'll just brush up the galv like we did with the rest of the galv work here. So probably just hit it with a wire brush. Although the wire wheel is a little bit on the aggressive side for that galv. So it might be a better idea just to use some sort of chemical paint stripper and a brush. So just removing the passenger door handle, the bolt plates which need a refurb, one bolt plate there horizontal, one bolt plate there horizontal, and then just to get it off there's a couple of tiny little screws, one there and one there, and it should just lift away, and then we can get the overspray off this and paint the inside and the outside of the door without hitting the doorknob, door handle. So down in there is my brake and tail light cluster wires, as well as there are 3 of those, and there are 3 identified what I thought were earth wires, but they've actually lost their original conduits. It's hard to say what they are. Here are 2 wires which I assume are the indicators, because there's an earth and a live, which is basically the only double that could come here apart from the illumination. And underneath, the green one is the green one we saw earlier. Number 4 and number 1, 2 and 3 are all marked on there. Right. The wires that come through down here are all visible underneath. Let's have a look. Oh yes, look, underneath. So they remain to be identified. And the JB World repair there. Hit the hole in the wing. And another one. And there might be a third hole somewhere. And that one went wrong. Yeah, time to do an update from the wheel. Update from the wheel. We have to stay there. The deep seal, sort of. Don't like it very much. Now the other end, of course, the stay is on there. Whoops. And that's the same for all 4 stays. Well, we fitted these lights. Now let's have a look around the back. You can tell because it's got 3 lights, that's the stopper tail. This one's only got 2. So that is the indicator. The original indicator for the Land Rover. I think it's this coloured one. Right, so we've got some thinking to do. Look in there, some wires. The wires for this side come outside. Now this has got a grommet. Let's remember that. Hello grommet. Let's go over and have a look at the other side, because a bit of a difference here, because we've got this illuminator. There's no grommet. Now I'm gonna have to cut these wires so I can put the grommet in. A bit awkward, isn't it? Now we know that is a single socket, so it must be the indicator. And the indicator for this side is just this plain green wire. Go and have a look at the other side. That's a single socket and it's a plain green wire. I actually thought that the indicator was that wire. So we've got some thinking to do about this. Now let's go underneath here, because we know the frame harness comes out. I made a big deal of it. There it is. Alright, now then. Let's go up and have a look under here. There's the frame harness. And under there, coming from, that has got a grommet, that bottom hole. But there's my bunch of wires. You can't even see. There's the bunch of wires coming out of the machine. And there's a bunch of wires coming out of the frame harness. So what we've got to do is add those together. Yeah, brilliant bit of planning there, Peter. Should have really put connectors on there while the tub was upside down, so I could just quickly hook them up. Yeah, and then we've got to run wires over to that side. Now that really should be the priority, because here I am. Got a hole to weld up there. There's no point in putting in the wiring harness to the front until we've really done the back. I seem to be picking up some rubbish here. Picking up rubbish everywhere. Right, familiar story. These indicators, they don't fit. My front wing, yeah, it's got holes. Where those white 2 holes are, that's the diameter of the holes on the wing. And these, there's no holes in the back. So these are only going to fit with a modification. Okay, this lens here, it screws in those. But I'm going to have to modify it so it screws all the way through into the wing. I'm going to have to drill a hole all the way through. I might be able to get away if I can find a thin, sort of like a 3BA or something. It might go all the way through. See that? It might go all the way through there. But at the moment it looks like I'm going to use a 4BA and drill a hole all the way through that. Which means that the screws it came with, which is a shame, but they're just not long enough. And these screws, actually, I've got to use nuts and bolts anyway, because these screws are too small to grip the nylon inserts in the wing. And I'm not going to drill holes in the wing. So the first modification that I've done is to drill all the way through with an M4, allowing me to use these M4 by 40 machine screws, which look like this. Now, the second modification that I've done, when you get these indicators, they're held on with the small screws like this. Now you want to keep that red waterproof washer. It just about fits on these M4s. It's a little tight, but that'll be okay. So that's the first thing. There's a couple more things that need to be done. So as you can see, the M4 by 40mm goes all the way through. You can bolt that, screw that where you need to. So there we go. Now the next thing we need to do is screw this down to make the contact on the bulb, for which you need a suitable screw. So I've got this screw. Now if I was to screw that down, it would stick out. Okay, it would stick out of the bottom. So we need to cut the screw down so that it sits behind the rubber boot, and then it won't show when it's bolted to the wing. So I'm just going to, I have to use an angle grinder to cut that down. My bandsaw won't do it, a hacksaw won't do it. It's quite a good screw, so it needs to be ground off with a cutting disc. Okay, there's the screw. Now if you can find a short screw, you won't have to cut it down, but I had to cut that one down. So I've got a bulb that works. So when that's screwed in, it will be proud through the back because it has to screw through, but it's only proud so much as will be absorbed by the rubber boot. So now I'm going to go and check the bulb works, and if that works, we can go and fit that to the machine. So there they are fitted. Now pay attention 007, because I think I've put the side light on upside down. It's got this hole pointing up. I noticed it when I put this one on, but I've rotated it round so the hole on this one is down here. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. When it stopped raining, I'll let it fill up with water, then I'll turn it round, and then all the water should trickle out of it. Looking at the back, there's like plenty of wire now, but I seem to remember there's some clips along the top of the wing, so I want to clip it up to the top of the wing. Now let's get a close look at how I've attached it at the back. So I've used a larger washer, a smaller washer, a spring washer and a bolt. I had to take my plastic clips out to do that. One of the plastic inserts was missing. It's a nylon insert. It takes a special kind of Lucas that I couldn't get a replacement for. So these do quite nicely, thank you. The ends of the wires go through this grommet eventually. But of course we want to be able to clip this out of the way up there on the wire clips at the top of the wing, which is going to be a lot of fun finding those. I'm going to have to feel my way with that. Okay, so this is a Y pack, this is a bear mark. These are the replacement lights I'm using. I've closed that little gap up, and I'll put them on the other side as well. It's a genuine replacement part. I think it's probably Chinese. I'll walk up to the front here, have a look at these. And these are the ones, the bear mark replacements. I put an M4 replacement through these as shown earlier. I think this one's on upside down. It's not raining now, so I should really get on with it. I've got to get some bulbs for these. Well, that takes a twin filament That takes the single filament. I need 2 off of each, plus another 2 singles for the front left hand side. Alright, we're in low light conditions at the moment, but so earlier I noticed there was a hole there and I said, oh, you know, I'm going to have to plug that up. Well, yeah, of course, if I take you over to the other side now and we put this in, then it's there, that hole. And so that corner bolts in like that. So let's go and have a look at the other side. Yeah, there's a matching hole there. I didn't notice it. Let's have a look from the front. It's there. So taking over to the other side, what I've had to do is, of course, use a larger washer. I could have put a matching larger washer over the other side, but I didn't. So one of the final door updates before they're fitted. That's a regular zinc primer that I've put over the repair. There's also quite a substantial repair along the base of the door bottom. The other door, this driver's door, had a repair along the bottom. And the other door top's painted. Probably, you know, not as proud of that repair as I could be. I didn't use a straight piece of metal. It's the inside driver's door. The window locks will be quite simple. Pop rivet. That's on both of those. That's not, I mean, now the hard part is to actually glaze it. After we've test fitted it, we can refit it quickly glazed. Alright. Well, let's put it into landscape mode. Hey, alright. Hey, this is why I wanted to put that door top in there so quick, because now it's dry on the inside. Very nice. Well, a little bit of snow coming in this side because I've got no door here. Snow in the footwell. But this is why I put the door on, so I could start to put the wiring harness in without it getting affected by the weather. Oh, full of snow. Lovely.